Hello, Brobs. We're back with The Wandering Heir, a Christmas story by Charles Reade. Chapter 5. McCarthy was a widower, and the house was kept by his daughter, a lady of very striking appearance. She was very tall and commanding and fair. Some thought her beautiful, others were repelled by the extreme haughtiness of her features, with which her deportment and manners corresponded. The two friends, of course, talked everybody over with whom they were likely to come in contact, and they differed about Mistress Christina McCarthy. James thought her the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Philip screamed, "What? A nose like a man's, foxy eyebrows, white eyelashes, and a cold, cruel eye. She is not a woman," said this candid critic. "She is a cat." "I never heard thee praise a woman yet," objected James. "That is their fault, not mine," retorted Philip, who had long ago resumed the upper hand. "You will be pleased to avoid that cat like poison," said Philip. "And if she runs after you, and I hear she has had a dozen beaux already, you will come to me for advice, or our friendship is at an end, sir." "I shall have my eye on her." The effect of Philip's espionage was this. He discovered that Christina McCarthy passed James and him as if they were dirt, her lofty affections being fixed on a big mulatto slave. Such an attachment was repugnant to the feelings of white men, and contrary to law, they kept it very close in consequence, and nobody on the farm dreamed of such a thing until this Argus-eyed Philip came and found it out by their secret glances and signals and a deal of subtle evidence. He told James of it and made merry over the lady's hauteur that is so like the Jade's. Again with Jade. Whenever one of them knows herself baser than all the rest, she puts on a mask of transcendent pride to throw dust in folks' eyes. But they cannot throw dust in mine. James hoped it was not true, for 'tis disgraceful, said he, and contrary to nature, and, poor man, she is his only child. "Don't contradict me," said Philip. "I tell you 'tis so, and I'll show you the law." He had picked up a copy of the state laws on purpose to ascertain the probable fate of this haughty beauty, whose superb carriage had roused the most vindictive feeling in Master Philip. James was not so curious in love affairs as Philip, and saw nothing to justify the libel. The lady passed often before his eyes, a model of cold dignity and feminine reserve. He scouted the notion and almost scolded Philip for his uncharitableness towards women. One evening, having done his work, he took Plutarch's Lives, which Philip had borrowed for him from the master, and lay down under a hedge of the prickly pear to read it. He was so absorbed in this book and lay so still that the little birds came about him and did not mind him. The dusk came on, and still with his young eyes he went on reading, till suddenly he heard footsteps on the other side of the hedge, and after the footsteps, voices. Now James was outside the hedge, but these speakers were inside, and well hidden by the shadow of some lofty trees. This, in fact, was the favorite rendezvous of Christina and the mulatto Regulus. James knew the young lady's voice directly, and though they spoke low and hurriedly, he heard enough to show him they were lovers, and that she was going to elope with the fellow as soon as she could lay her hands on a large sum of money her father was about to receive for the sale of another plantation. James listened with horror and asked himself what on earth he should do. At last, these ill-assorted lovers parted, that is to say, Regulus went off, leaving his young mistress, to follow at such an interval of time as might lead to no suspicion. Then James thought he would not tell the old man, but would, at all events, try first to show the young woman her folly. He ran hastily to a gate, penetrated the wood, and came swiftly through the trees to her, for he saw her white dress still standing there. Seeing him come straight to her so fast, she took him for Regulus come back with news, and she was so unguarded as to say, "Why, what now, my dear Regulus?" A strange voice answered her, at whose first tone she uttered a faint cry of alarm. "'Tis not Regulus, madam, but one who has more real good wishes towards you than he has." Christina trembled violently, but defended herself. She drew up haughtily and said, "Why, 'tis James Annesley. How dare you speak to me? What are you doing here at this time? Have you been here long?" "Long enough to learn something that astonishes and pains me, and I hope I may be in time to prevent it. Madam, I saw you and Regulus together." "Wonderful! And now you see me and another of my slaves together. I was giving Regulus an order, and now I give you an order. Go home and sleep the liquor off that hath made thee so bold as to speak to me. Begone, or dread the whip, thou malapert." James stood his ground. "Before I go, tell me what I ought to do. I am your father's servant, madam, not yours. Both you and I, we eat his bread. Ought I to let him be robbed of his daughter and his money and never breathe a word?" Then she began to pant and said, "What mean you?" Then he told her that he had overheard every word that had passed between her and Regulus. "Indeed," said she, with an attempt at defiance, belied by her short breath. "Repeat it then," said she ironically. "I will," said he gravely, and he did repeat it, and at such length and with such exact fidelity, that as he went on, shame and infinite terror crawled over her. Her knees smote each other, and her haughty frame cringed and writhed, and she sank half down upon a woodpile that was near, and her white hands fell helpless, one in front of her and the other by her side. Never was a proud creature so stricken down in a moment. Then this good young man pitied her and hoped to save her. He said, "Madam, for heaven's sake, look at the consequences. What good can come of it? If you fly with Regulus and take your father's money, you will be caught one day and set on the gallows and be publicly whipped. For I have seen one as young and fair as you served so." A moan from the crushed woman was the only comment. "And if you steal not, yet marry a mulatto, 'tis against the law, and your children will be illegitimate, and you will lose your father's estate and break his heart." Christina interrupted him. "Oh, say no more, James. For pity's sake, I have been mad. Oh, what a precipice! James, do not thrust me over. Do not tell my father, for mercy's sake." "Not if you will promise to forego this mad design. Sure that mulatto must have bewitched you, that one so fair as you should cast an eye of love on anything so foul." She caught at this directly. "Aye," she cried, "'twas witchcraft and no other thing. But you have opened my eyes, good James. Too late, too late." And she burst into a flood of tears. "That depends on yourself. If you will swear to hold no more converse with that mulatto, I shall not feel bound to utter one word of what I know." "James," said the lady, "you are my guardian angel. You have saved me from a crime, and from an act of frenzy I now look back upon with horror. Do not continue your good work. Do but continue your good work. Advise me at every step, and all will be well." James was surprised into consenting to that, and she then begged him to conduct her home. "Alas," said she, "I can scarce... I'm fucking botching this. Hold on, let me turn around and get some better light. Oh no, this whole cover is gonna fall off. Oh. I can scarce stand." James was surprised into consenting to that, and she then begged him to conduct her home. "Alas," said she, "I can scarce stand." She leaned on James's shoulder and went very slowly and feebly. This gave her time to say some of those vague things with which such women think to excuse their follies. "If you knew all, you would pity me, even more than you condemn me." And again, with her white hand leaning on his arm, she said, "How sorcery binds us! And what with this and her gentle pressure of his hand at parting, she disturbed even this Joseph's mind a little, and set him thinking it would not be very hard to cure her of her insane caprice. Next day she sent for him openly and told him her plan. I shall keep out of his way. I shall not move from my own apartments, or if I do, you shall be with me. And now here is a letter I beg you to take to him. Read it first before I seal it. The letter ran thus: An accident has frustrated our design for the present. My father has not yet brought the money into the house. I hurt my foot last night, and shall not, I fear, be able to come to our rendezvous for some days. Burn this before the face of whatever person I may send it by, or I shall think you do not mean fair to the writer. James highly disapproved this letter and told her so. Why, said he, it cannot fail to keep hope alive in him. Exactly, said she, and so he will not blab of my folly. No more he will if you break off all connection with him. And why write at all? Such a letter is worse than silence. However, she talked him over and convinced him that she was resolved, in a cowardly and artful way, to detach herself gradually from the deplorable connection, so that he half consented to take the letter. Then she took a slice of cake out of her closet and a pint of rich wine, and sat close to him while he drank it, and showed him such signs of favor that he was the more inclined to believe she would readily detach herself from Regulus. So he consented to take the letter. The mulatto eyed him keenly, took the letter, read it, burned it before his eyes, and said, Tell her what you have seen me do, that is all. Christina now showed James so many marks of favor, and so open, that Philip took him to task. My poor mouse, said he scornfully, are you going to let that cat catch you so easily? When that produced no effect, he remonstrated, advised, scolded, and at last quarreled with him downright, and would not speak to him. Now James was really rather smitten with Christina. Her tenderness and cajoleries, following upon her haughty demeanor, had wonderfully tickled his vanity, and even grazed his heart, but he was not so far gone as to part with Philip's friendship. So one day he came to him and said, Dear Philip, do not you quarrel with me in a mistake. I will tell thee the truth about Mistress Christina, but first you must swear to me on the big Bible never to reveal one word of that I tell thee. Philip turned pale at this, but took the oath, and then James told him all. He was more alarmed than surprised. I knew she was not the minute I clapped eyes on her. Look at her white lashes and her cold, cruel eye. The unnatural beast that would rob her own father and wed with a Brown. And what sort of a man are you? Why went you not straight to her father like an honest man? What had you to do to go to her and get cozened, you silly oaf? Are you a match for that artful jade? Think you? Nay, she seems very penitent, and keeps away from him, and whisper, Philip, if I choose, I could take the Brown's place, as you call him, any day, and really 'tis a temptation. You love the wretch? Nay, not quite love, but she is so fair, she was so haughty, and now so tender. I own, I think, more about her than I ever did of any woman yet. To be sure, I am very proud of saving her, and that makes the heart soft towards the fair creature I have rescued from a precipice. Philip's face turned green, and his lips pale. His face was distorted and discolored with the anguish these words cost him, and he sat mute as a statue. James did not happen to look at him, and went maundering on. The only thing I like not is that letter to Regulus. What think you of it, Philip? Philip, though sick at heart, made a great effort, and said faintly, the letter was writ to show him he must temporize, but not despair. Prithee, James, leave me a while. I have work to do. Come in an hour, and we will see what all this really means. He went, and then Philip began to sigh and moan at the confession James had made, and for a long while he could only think of his own misery at being supplanted in James' heart. But of course, his hatred of this rival soon led him into a keen and hostile examination of her conduct, and the consequence was a new and more disinterested anxiety arose. Disinterested anxiety arose, which led him to put a very keen question to James the moment he entered the room. Has the mulatto shown you any enmity? None whatever. Yet he sees his mistress bestow favors on you. Then all is clear. She has told him. You are their dupe. How that woman must hate you. Nay, said James, smiling conceitedly. That I'll be sworn she does not. What? Not when you have come between her and her fancy, and do keep them apart? Think you when once a woman hath loved a woolly mulatto, oh no, she can so come back to wholesome affections. She hates you, and spends her days and nights scheming to destroy you. Oh, those cunning lashes and that cruel eye, they make me tremble. Was she a fucking cyclops? Why does he keep saying that cruel eye? They make me tremble for you. Let me think what she is about at this very minute. He resumed after a pause. She will draw you on to offer her some innocent freedom, then fly out and accuse you of wooing her. Who will believe you, a slave, when the young mistress swears? I'll not give her the occasion. How can you tell? And if you do not, why then she will get rid of you some other way. You shall be stabbed in the back some dark night and never know who struck you. But I shall know, and I shall kill her before I die. So strong were Philip's fears that he armed James with an enormous knife and made him promise never to go to any lonely place without it. James assented to quiet him, but in his heart made light of these extravagant fears. On the other hand, he felt piqued by Philip's insinuation that the mulatto and his penitent were duping him, and so he used often to get up in the dead of night, and make his rounds with stealthy foot to watch. The effect of this vigilance was that one moonlight night, coming softly around the corner, he found Regulus under the young mistress's bedroom window, which window was open. The weather being warm, James collared him directly. What do you do here at this time of night? I do what you do, said the mulatto. Not so, said James, for I guard my master's goods against the knave. Knave thyself, and meddler and fool, cried the mulatto, whose rage had been simmering this many a day. From words they came to blows and struck each other hard and fast without much parrying, in the midst of which Christina put her head out of her window on the first floor and looked steadily down at them. After a few moments of self-possessed observation, she said in a keen whisper, "Kill him." In this comment, the white struck at the face and the black at the body. By this means the black's face was soon covered with blood. But the white man was most hurt, and felt instinctively that he should soon be overpowered. So he closed with his dark antagonist. They wrestled fiercely, but it ended in James throwing him and falling heavily on him. The ground was hard, and the fall of the two heavy bodies on it tremendous. It drove the wind out of Regulus for a moment, and James got him by the ears and pounded his bullet head on the ground. Christina now screamed loudly. A window or two were open. Night-capped heads popped out, and the combatants separated by mutual consent and retired, glaring at each other. James had not gone far when he was seized with a violent sickness, and after that he crawled to his bed, bruised and seriously hurt by the body blows he had received. Next morning he was too stiff and ill to go to his work. Philip heard a vague report that James and the mulatto had been fighting in the dead of night, and sent a message directly to James desiring to speak to him. The servant came back and said he was too ill to leave his bed. Philip was much concerned at this, and after a slight hesitation, went and knocked at the door of James's room. He slept over the stables. A faint voice said, "Come in." Philip lifted the latch. He found James lying on the bed, just as he had come from the battle, and his face 2 or 3 colors. Philip had intended to scold him, but this was no time. He came softly to him and said, "Alas, my poor James, how is it with thee?" "But badly, in truth," said James, still in a faint voice. How came it about? He told him the truth. Ah, said Philip sadly, jealously. How men do love ill women. That old cat, 30, if she is a day, to have two lovers, two nations after a manner fighting for her own nights beneath her very window. Did she see you? Indeed she did, and smiled, I'll be bound, at what would make a good woman scream to part the fools. Did she say naught? She said, kill him. Kill whom? The black, I do suppose. I am not so sure of that. And Philip fell in to a reverie. It was broken by James going suddenly back on something Philip had said. I do believe thou art right, said he, and finding him under her window, I felt a sort of jealousy as well as wrath at his continuing to tempt her. It 'twas so, I am rightly served. But flout me not for it, Philip, for I think I am sped. And since it's halfway through this chapter, I will pause there and call it quits for now, brofs. Goodbye.